Hello friends! Today I'm going to show you how to take a bias cut skirt and add a cute little front slit. For this example, I'm using my Madeleine skirt, but you can use any sort of similar pattern. Because I'm quite limited for space, I'm going to be using a mini version of my pattern to show you how I hack it. First step is finding the center of the pattern. You can do this either by folding it in half or measuring it out. I've chosen to measure it out for this example. Draw a center line and then choose which leg you want the slit on. I've decided on the left leg, so I'll be making my markings on the right side of the pattern. Next, we will be creating a quarter line on the pattern. To do that, we will be finding the middle point between the center line and the seam allowance. Make a middle mark at the very bottom of the skirt and the very top. Continue making middle marks down the length of the skirt. Make as many as possible because we will be connecting them in the next step. Starting from the top, start connecting the dots by using a smooth line. You can either do this by hand or by using a French curve or by folding the pattern and tracing along the outside edge. Because my Madeleine pattern is a mirror for both front and back, we will have to move that line we just made a little towards the center point. This will make sure the slit will sit closer to the front as opposed to the side. Start making marks 3 centimeters or roughly 1 inch towards the center of the skirt. Now connect those, making a new line. Once you're satisfied with that, simply cut along that line you just made. You should have 2 pieces that look like this. When we lay the pattern out to cut our fabric, we will have to add seam allowance. Line those pieces out along the fabric's bias like this. If you need a more in-depth explanation of how to do this, check out my full Madeleine tutorial. Start spreading the pieces apart by 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch. We will be cutting out the larger piece first. Weigh down your fabric pieces. If using scissors, start tracing a line along the inside of the smaller piece. This will be that larger piece's new seam allowance. If using a rotary blade, simply use that smaller piece's inner edge as your cutting guide. Whichever method you choose, start cutting out that new seam allowance. Now using that line you just cut, we will be making the seam allowance on the smaller piece. Lay that smaller pattern piece out from that line by 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch. Then continue cutting out the rest of the pattern edges. To continue with this tutorial, you will need the 2 pattern pieces you just created and a full non-altered back piece. Excluding the slit, pin the 2 side seams together, wrong side of the fabric. Your slit seam will overlap like this in the front. Start sewing French seams down the sides of the skirt. For a quick reminder, sew the wrong sides of the fabric together by 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. Trim off that edge. Then flipping the skirt inside out, sew a 1/2 centimeter or 2/5 of an inch seam along the fold. For more detailed instructions, check out my Madeleine video. Now that we have our side seams together, we will need to figure out how high we want our slit. To do this, we will have to try on our skirt. Lining up the side seams, wrap the skirt around your front, making sure the top is sitting about 3.5 centimeters or 1.5 inches above your waist. This is to compensate for the elastic waistband. You should probably do this in front of a mirror. Now, determine where you want the top of the slit to stop. For reference, I am making a UK size 10 and I marked my slit 36 centimeters or roughly 14 inches from the top. Now we will be sewing the slit combined with a French seam. Pin the fabric wrong sides together, starting from the top and ending at your slit marking. Feel free to mark your slit with double pins. Flip the skirt over, making sure the top is facing your right. Taking some sort of chalk or fabric marker, place a dot 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch straight up from where you marked your slit. Then, making a similar mark, 0.5 centimeters or 2/5 of an inch along the edge of the fabric towards the top of the skirt. Draw a small straight line over that mark. We will be sewing down to this line in the next step. Sew a 1/2 centimeter or 2/5 of an inch seam from the top of the skirt to the line you just made, stopping with the needle down. Now raising the presser foot, pivot the fabric so you can sew a straight line to the dot you marked earlier. Back sew a couple times, and your seam should look like this. Snip your fabric from the outer edge to the end of that angled seam, as close as possible, being very careful not to clip the seam. Trim off that excess fabric along the edge of that seam. Then flip your skirt inside out. Roll out that seam and iron. Feel free to pop in a couple pins. Taking special attention when ironing out that angled seam. Sew a centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam from the top straight down to that angle. Backstitching a couple times. When done, it should look like this. Flip the seam out so it lays flat, wrong side of the fabric facing you. Iron the slit open by 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch, adding a couple pins if you would like. Feel free to use a tailor's block to really press those folds. Now taking those pointy bits at the top of the slit, fold them down so they line up with the inside of the ironed crease, and press. Pin to prevent shifting. Fold the sides in and press that as well. Pin if you would like, and we will edge stitch that all in place. Using a regular straight stitch, sew along the edges of the folds. Iron that out and you should have a slit that looks like this. Add the elastic waistband, drape for 24 hours, then finish the bottom with a rolled hem. Like I've mentioned a million times already, I go into more depth in my full Madeleine tutorial. The only slight difference is when you're top stitching the elastic, also stitch the new seam, not just the side seams. And when sewing a rolled hem, you won't have to do anything different at the slit. Just backstitch a couple times to hold that part together. Now you're ready to take your new bias cut skirt with your fancy new slit out into the wild. Hopefully this tutorial was pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section, and I will do my best to help you. Anyways, I love you, stay true to yourself, and always fight that good fight.